It is profound and I think underrated to do what we have the space to really do in social sciences and human services, which is to,
Yes.
like you said, align and introspection. I'm so glad you give the caveat of like, it isn't easy.
No.
Right. And I think
No.
that's so important because we do have these concepts of, um, you know, growth and self development and transformation is just this strictly positive experience and that there's only things to gain. No, there is not. And
No.
there's
Mhm.
associations with grief. And what I think is just so
Yes.
fascinating is that that is what we know from a professional level. We understand we're working with populations who are going through these periods of hardship and growth. And yet when we
Mhm.
turn around and look at ourselves, we are often, conditioned to an extent
Mhm.
to think that, in order to do that process,
Mhm.
um, it's going to be easy. Or the other side of the coin, where it's like avoidance because it's like I don't want to feel and confront those dynamics that uphold,
Mhm.
these insecurities, especially if, when
Mhm.
it comes to the unknown. I think that like
Mhm.
meeting where people where they are, I have heard that so many times. I really think it should become like
Mhm.
a principle, a foundational principle to human
Yes.
services. And,
Mhm.
because it carries an openness, like there are many ways to define that statement, but it also is just very clear.
Mhm.
Meet people where they are. That means
Mhm.
leave behind the things you want to associate and stigmatize in the process of
Mhm.
providing service and just,
Mhm.
be a little curious about where people are. You
Mhm.
don't have to agree with it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but if you can't do that, you might want to look in a different direction if it's very difficult for you. And that's okay too.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
give me the 101 on universal design for
Universal.
learning. Because, yeah, I'd not heard
Okay.
of that before. And I think
Okay.
educators, especially in the audience, would be interested in hearing more about
Mhm.
it.
There is a, a wonderful speaker that I listen to who comes from the Eastern philosophies. And he talked about stress management. And he talked about, he said, in Western societies, he said, when I first started learning, they talked about stress management. And he said, from my particular culture, stress management, why would you want to manage stress? Why wouldn't you want to just abolish stress and get that stressful thing out of your life? And so I had to listen to it over and over again. And I said, it makes sense. I was a proponent for managing stress, but when I started to dig in more and I said, let me alleviate the stress, try to abolish the stress. And that was where the emotional intelligence came in, understanding about myself and understanding how to manage my emotions instead of trying to manage my stress. I don't even want to get to the stressful place, and it's not that I don't have any stress in my life, but it's learning how to put it in its proper context and not let it run me. So I just wanted to just put that there, that I have an issue with the whole stress management, because it's really a moneymaker when you think about stress management. Instead of getting to the bottom of where the stress is coming from, and build in multiple modalities so that you can have a successful life. So universal design for learning focuses on three things. I mean, actually, like four things. The first one is engagement with students, representation, action, and expression. And it's all about providing multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. And before I even learned, I actually learned formally about universal design for learning about 5 years ago in an adjunct conference. And when they were talking about it, I actually mentioned the things that I was doing in my class that I hadn't even titled Universal Design for Learning, but I was already doing it just because of the way that I approached my
Mm.
students. And so when I start looking at formally looking at what UDL was, it just confirmed, everything about my teaching approach.
Hmm.
But when you think about the student, and I'm going to talk about like for us, if we have a student that whether it's they're all adults, whether they're 18 or 50, if we think that they have some type of learning issue, we can, let them know about our office of students with student services office. But often, it's a slippery slope. We have to be careful. So some of the students that actually will give me their accommodations paper, at toward like the end, they didn't even need it because I was always able to give them, provide multiple means of engagement. Say if we're on a chapter, and at the end of this chapter, you would typically have a 5-page paper. Some people may do well with that. I like the, I'd say let's do a Prezi presentation. Let's do a PowerPoint presentation. I want you to explain to me. I want you to go out into the community if this class focuses on say for instance one of my psychology classes, we were talking about the hard of hearing community, people that are hard of hearing. And I was so excited. We were talking about the visual impairments, physical impairments that we got one of our first Starbucks in the District of Columbia that was that was Neil Gallaudet College, the college for the hard of hearing, the deaf. And so we got a Starbucks there, and it was a Starbucks where no one speaks traditionally. You go in, you order your Starbucks. They would teach you how to sign your name. I was so excited about it, and every who doesn't like Starbucks. And so what I did, I gave my students an incentive. If you go to this Starbucks, you get 100 points. You come back, you tell us how to sign your name. You tell me the experience of not hearing the nice music, and that really resonated with them about person-centered thinking, about people first language. What is the preferred term to call for to talk about people that are hard of hearing, and to actually have the lived experience. So then, after they did that, then when they were able to write a paper, it was with enthusiasm instead of grief. And it was like, oh, it wasn't like, oh, they were excited about writing the paper because they actually got to experience it. And I think that's the multiple levels of representation, where you're saying, I want you to go and see and feel it, and I want you to engage. How often do we engage with people that are not, because we're pretty tribal now, in this country. How often do we engage with people that are different from us? But to hear this is just a Starbucks situation, but to hear the students say, when I came in, the nice music wasn't playing. You write down your drink, and then they will teach you how to sign. It was an experience that they will never forget, and I hang my hat on that. That's just one of the examples. But that is the way that I engage them in something, and they actually had to be tested on the different types of challenges that people have. With whether it was physical challenges or emotional, people that are hard of hearing. So that was one.
The
Hmm.
experience part is, I at this point I can't even. There are not enough words in the English language that articulate,
Hmm.
what power is behind that. Let's consider the universal arcs of stories, right? That we all
Yes,
kind of
yes.
share. When we hear where people are coming from, even if it's an experience that we will never be able to approach, right? It's impossible
Hmm.
on some level. Like for instance, I'm able bodied. There's very little chance that I'll be able to experience that of someone's disabled.
Hmm.
If we can hear it, there's always an inkling, an opportunity that a connection can be facilitated through empathy, whether you recognize
Hmm.
it's happening or not.
That's
You had
right.
mentioned earlier that you were being empathetic towards one of your fellow students, and you didn't even know
Hmm.
you didn't have the language for it.
Hmm.
Hearing and understanding and processing the experience of others is that process alone has some interference or challenge to who we think we are and the belief systems that we associate with not just our environment, but like our actual existence, because we cling. And Eastern philosophy talks about the dangers of this a lot. We
Yeah.
cling to these ideas that form our quote unquote egos, and
Yes.
you know, persistent. We're persistent about protecting ourselves because we're animals. At the end
Hmm.
of the day, we're all animals.
Hmm.
Um, and our jobs in this field is to see that, witness it, and accept it's part of all of our realities. But especially when it comes to meeting people where they are and being open without assumption or stigma to the infinite possibilities of where somebody's coming from, right? That makes us better at our jobs. And it's on top of that, it's awesome that you are teaching in a dynamic way that like highlights that, because it is invigorating. in your realm of, I guess among your cohort of fellow educators, and I guess the system of your university as a whole, do you see opportunities or a willingness or curiosity for this kind of learning and teaching dynamic, or is there still a lot of bureaucracy involved with, how educators are either allowed or decide to inform and guide their students?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think that that our college, I was in the formal training like 5 years ago as an adjunct, so they were introducing it then. But over the last 3 years, they've totally they haven't quoted you must use universal design for learning, but they're quoting the tenets, empathy, meeting students where they are. All of this language over the last uh, post pandemic, the language has changed, so they're
Mhm.
really wanting that. And the whole collaborative learning piece, this is another thing about universal design for learning. Every class that I open up, I always say this is a judgment free zone. And when you step over the threshold or when you come in the courtroom, this is judgment free, because the tenets of universal design for learning is that we learn from each other and students learn from each other. So collaborative learning is really big. And when we talk about collaborative learning, something just like what you just talked about, some things may not feel good to hear from other students, but when they are able to look at it objectively, as objective as they can, they'll see the worth in what that person is saying, even if it's something that they don't espouse to believe. But to understand, you're giving everybody an opportunity to state their position, and then what I've noticed in my work is it might be 4 or 5 weeks later, something that might have been a hot button topic for another student to hear actually comes up, and they're able to process it better. And they're able to process and understand that person better simply because they were able to begin to look at things judgment free. And then my hope is that they take the way my classroom management style is and practice that in the world. It's about really letting your guard down, we all have isms that we grapple with every day, and then when I bring the core curriculum in, then they're really able to digest it. So that collaborative learning, that's the big piece, is that students, regardless of your age, and that's a fact of the subject matter, you learn from each other, and that representation, and being able to teach in a non-traditional way, but you still are making sure those course objectives are mastered by the conclusion of that class.
Kind of rounding it out, our
Hmm.
conversation, when
Hmm.
you imagine either your personal, professional future, and also
Hmm.
just the overall realm of human services, where do you see it heading? And you're welcome to be
Hmm.
optimistic. You're welcome to be
Hmm.
pessimistic. Like,
Hmm.
considering the work you've done and what you're passionate about, how
Hmm.
does that, how does that correlate with where we're going in our field?
I think that in the field of human service, and I'm going to say social sciences in total, I think that we're going in a good direction. I've had the advantage of teaching some students from we call it the middle college. I've had in my psychology class, I've had 15-year-olds that are working on their high school diplomas and their associate degrees. And so I've had the advantage of seeing the 15, 16-year-olds that are taking psychology 1010. And when I look at those minds, all the things that we're talking about, they are very open. They are non-judgmental, and I can tell you, 75% of the students that I've had the pleasure of teaching over the last 5 years possess uh, change agent abilities. I mean, and they want it, I mean, they want it. And so I am very encouraged in the future of human service and social sciences, not only because of the mental health crisis that we have now, but with the way younger people and now older people in certain communities that were closed to therapy are embracing therapy. So, and that was one of the reasons why I was able to disconnect after 10 years, because I wanted to be able to um, be responsible for educating the future human service professionals, because I've done it all, so I'm encouraged. You talking about my approach with meeting people where they are. Oh gosh, over the last 5 years, you have people that these students are really are going to be better than me, more informed than I am. And that's just how convinced I am that the work that we do at PGCC and the work that I do is paying off, because now we've had people. So I do this grouping, and in the beginning, I have them do a spirit animal quiz. They're like, spirit animal quiz. I said, it absolutely has no scientific validity. I just asked you to take it 2 or 3 times. Whatever your spirit animal is, we'll put you in a group. And so when they do group activities, they're with their spirit animal, and we'll see if they have any commonalities. And they're able to connect. They're able to agree and disagree. At the end of the semester, I'll go through Tuckman's theory of group development, team development, and we'll go through the norming, the storming, the journeying, the performing, all of that. We'll go through all the Tuckmans, and they'll actually explain how it was for them through every step of Tuckman's theory, and they know how that translates into your workspace. When you go to work and you're going to work with teams all over. If you're in a faith community, you have different teams. And then they've able to actually, they say the friends you make at college are the friends you'll have forever. But I've been able to foster relationships with these people simply because of the way that I roll out the assignments, and that they care about people that's in their group. So my hope is that empathy that I have for them, that they give to other people, and empathy and grace, and they're doing it. I've just talked to some students today that graduated, and they're like really good friends.
Yeah, that
Mm,
is refreshing, and it definitely
mm,
it offers some optimism to
mhm,
where this is going. That there's
mhm,
there's less resistance to considering, these introspective ways of learning, of
mhm,
connection.
mhm,
And I think
mhm.
where we are in this moment in history, we're running out of external options to to react to these to resist this kind of approach.
Some of the things that work, storytelling is very good. And I talk to them about overcoming, fears or anxieties. In this work that we do with human service, there's always been a population um, that I didn't think I could ever work with, because I just can't understand. I couldn't understand it. And some years ago, I would say, we're going through this in psychology class, and I would say it's fine to say, you recuse yourself from certain types of work. And then over 5 years, when I was able to understand more about this particular population's behavior and why they behave that way, and that it is something to deal with the neurotransmitters, and it's not just behavior based. It's not just behavior based. I can say, I definitely can work with these people. And that part of the behavior that we see manifested isn't their problem. It isn't totally just about choice. It's about chemical too. And I think when you can put it in proper context about chemical versus choice, because we all, when we see people bad, we say, you made a bad choice. No, some of it's chemical. And so as I evolve, I give that information to my students, and I notice their evolution. I notice them saying by the end of the semester, you know what, Professor Carter, when you told me this and you shared, now I can see it won't be the same situation, but they'll apply that to another situation. So I feel
Yes.
very gratified, and gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Even on my worst day, I always say gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. So I just wanted to share that because it was on my head.
I'm
Mm-hmm,
so glad that you did. And I won't get
mm-hmm,
into that, but I think
mm-hmm,
part of the education that I've received in the psychology
mm-hmm,
of humans,
mm-hmm,
if you are stuck in an emotional conflict with yourself because
mm-hmm,
of the background and experience or decisions of others, guess
mm-hmm,
what? There is some room for you to exist in a space that's alternative to that, where you
mm-hmm,
understand that the person in front of you that you are
mm-hmm,
attempting to meet, where meet them where they are,
mm-hmm,
is no different from you in the science of the way we experience reality. And that alone helped me realize, like, oh, like, I cut some people some slack, because
mm-hmm,
guess what, I have to learn to regulate and unpack and disassemble and
mm-hmm,
rebuild the
mm-hmm,
process of my own biological existence, and
mm-hmm,
they have to too. And I'm
mm-hmm,
okay with that. That
mm-hmm.
gives me more space to be like, look,
Yes.
I get it, you're human. You're human. We're all
Yes,
human.
yes, yes, yes.
Ah,
Beautiful. Well, thank
yeah,
you.
you humble me, and I'm sure that our
Thank
audience
you.
is going to want more of
Thank
what you've
you.
got to deliver.
Special thanks to our guest, Professor Carter. Find more roundtable discussions on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the iHeartRadio app. For Everything Knows, hit the subscribe button and be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. Thanks for watching and supporting the podcast.